America stands on the precipice of a dramatic shift in its approach to justice. The nation is bracing itself for a potential overhaul in the legal landscape, one that could redefine the very essence of punishment and retribution. President-elect Donald Trump, a staunch advocate for the death penalty, has vowed to unleash its full force upon the nation. His rhetoric has been clear and unwavering, promising a return to what he perceives as a more just and stringent system of law and order. His promise to direct the Department of Justice to vigorously pursue capital punishment has sent shockwaves through the legal system and ignited a firestorm of debate. Legal experts, human rights activists, and ordinary citizens alike are grappling with the implications of such a policy shift. Trump's unwavering belief in the death penalty as a deterrent and a tool for retribution is clear. He has often cited the need for a strong response to crime, arguing that the death penalty serves as the ultimate deterrent against the most egregious offenses. He sees it as the ultimate punishment for the most heinous crimes. In his view, certain acts are so abhorrent that they warrant the most severe form of justice available. This perspective has found resonance among those who believe that the current system is too lenient. Trump's campaign trail was littered with calls for tougher sentencing, including expanding the death penalty to encompass a wider range of offenses. His speeches often highlighted the need for a robust legal framework to tackle crime and ensure public safety. Drug trafficking, human trafficking, and even the killing of U.S. citizens by migrants could all potentially carry a death sentence under Trump's vision. This expansion of capital punishment is seen by his supporters as a necessary step to curb these serious crimes. This hardline stance resonates with his base, who see him as a champion of law and order. They believe that a tougher approach is needed to restore safety and security in communities across the country. Trump's return to the White House after a 4-year hiatus marks a return to an era of aggressive federal executions. His previous tenure saw a significant increase in the number of federal executions, a trend that he seems poised to continue. His previous administration oversaw 13 executions in 2020 alone, the highest number in over a century. This unprecedented surge in federal executions was a clear indication of his administration's commitment to capital punishment. This surge in executions, coupled with his recent pronouncements, paints a chilling picture of what's to come. The legal community is bracing for a renewed push towards capital punishment, with all the ethical and moral debates that accompany it. The stage is set for a showdown between those who believe in the sanctity of life and those who demand the ultimate retribution. This ideological battle is likely to play out in courtrooms, legislative halls, and public forums across the nation. The battle lines are drawn and the stakes couldn't be higher. As the nation grapples with these profound questions of justice and morality, the lives of countless individuals hang in the balance. The lives of countless individuals hang in the balance. The decisions made in the coming months and years will shape the future of the American justice system and the very fabric of society. In the waning days of his presidency, Joe Biden faced a monumental decision that would define his legacy and set a new course for the nation's approach to justice. Joe Biden made a decision that would reverberate through the halls of justice and beyond. With a stroke of his pen, he commuted the sentences of 37 federal inmates on death row. This decision was not made lightly. It was the result of extensive deliberation and consultation with legal experts, human rights advocates, and his closest advisors. Biden understood the gravity of his actions and the message it would send to the nation. He commuted the sentences of 37 federal inmates on death row, transforming their sentences to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This act of clemency was unprecedented in its scale and scope. The decision was met with a mix of relief and outrage. For the inmates and their families, it was a second chance at life, albeit behind bars. For others, it was a betrayal of justice and a disregard for the victims and their families. This act of clemency, unprecedented in its scale, underscored Biden's deeply held belief that the death penalty should be reserved only for the most extreme cases. He believed that the justice system should be fair, equitable, and free from the biases that have historically plagued it. Biden's decision was a reflection of his commitment to criminal justice reform. He had long been a critic of the death penalty, arguing that it was a flawed and morally questionable practice. His actions were a stark departure from the policies of his predecessor. The death penalty, in Biden's view, should be reserved only for the most extreme cases. He believed that the risk of executing an innocent person was too great and that the system was too prone to errors and biases. Biden's actions were a stark departure from the policies of his predecessor, Donald Trump, who had overseen a record number of federal executions during his time in office. The contrast between the two leaders' approaches to justice could not have been more pronounced. They reflected a fundamental difference in ideology, a clash between two opposing views on justice and punishment. Where Trump saw the death penalty as a necessary tool for maintaining order and deterring crime, Biden saw it as a flawed and morally questionable practice. This ideological divide was not just about the death penalty, it was about the broader approach to criminal justice. Biden believed in a more nuanced approach, one that prioritized rehabilitation and second chances over retribution and punishment. Where Trump saw the death penalty as a necessary tool for maintaining order, Biden saw it as a flawed and morally questionable practice. He believed that the justice system should be fair, equitable, and free from the biases that have historically plagued it. Biden's administration believed in a more nuanced approach to criminal justice, one that prioritized rehabilitation and second chances. They argued that the death penalty was not an effective deterrent and that its application was often tainted by racial bias and the possibility of wrongful conviction. The Biden administration believed in a more nuanced approach to criminal justice, one that prioritized rehabilitation and second chances. They argued that the death penalty was not an effective deterrent and that its application was often tainted by racial bias and the possibility of wrongful conviction. Biden's commutations, while celebrated by human rights groups and advocates for criminal justice reform, were met with fierce opposition from some quarters. Victims' families in particular felt betrayed and outraged, their pain compounded by the belief that their loved ones' killers had been spared the ultimate punishment. They argued that the death penalty was not an effective deterrent and that its application was often tainted by racial bias and the possibility of wrongful conviction. Biden's commutations, while celebrated by human rights groups and advocates for criminal justice reform, were met with fierce opposition from some quarters. Victims' families in particular felt betrayed and outraged, their pain compounded by the belief that their loved ones' killers had been spared the ultimate punishment. The debate over the death penalty, reignited by Biden's act of mercy, was far from over. Biden's commutations, while celebrated by human rights groups and advocates for criminal justice reform, were met with fierce opposition from some quarters. Victims' families in particular felt betrayed and outraged, their pain compounded by the belief that their loved ones' killers had been spared the ultimate punishment. The debate over the death penalty, reignited by Biden's act of mercy, was far from over. It highlighted the deep divisions in American society over issues of justice, punishment, and the role of the state in taking a life. Victims' families in particular felt betrayed and outraged, their pain compounded by the belief that their loved ones' killers had been spared the ultimate punishment. The debate over the death penalty, reignited by Biden's act of mercy, was far from over. Their pain compounded by the belief that their loved ones' killers had been spared the ultimate punishment. The debate over the death penalty, reignited by Biden's act of mercy, was far from over. The debate over the death penalty, reignited by Biden's act of mercy, was far from over. It highlighted the deep divisions in American society over issues of justice, punishment, and the role of the state in taking a life. The weight of the death penalty debate falls heavily on the shoulders of those most intimately affected, the families of victims and the families of the condemned. These families are often thrust into the public eye, their private grief and struggles laid bare for all to see. The emotional toll is immense, and the stakes couldn't be higher. For them, it's not a philosophical exercise or a political football, but a matter of life and death, justice and retribution, mercy and forgiveness. The conversations they have are filled with raw emotion, and the decisions made impact their lives forever. But a deeply personal and agonizing reality. The pain is palpable, the tears are real, and the heartache is unending. Each family member carries a burden that is uniquely their own, shaped by their experiences and their love for the person they have lost or are about to lose. For some victims' families, the death penalty represents the only acceptable form of justice. They believe that it is the only way to bring closure to their suffering, to feel that justice has been served. The death penalty for them is a way to honor their loved one's memory, to ensure that the person responsible for their pain suffers the ultimate consequence. They attend memorial services, hold vigils, and keep the memory of their loved ones alive in their hearts and minds, to ensure that the person responsible for their pain suffers the ultimate consequence. They see the courtroom as a battleground where justice must be fought for and won. The judge's verdict is a moment of reckoning, a culmination of their hopes and fears. They see life in prison, even without parole, as a lenient alternative, a betrayal of their loss. To them, anything less than the death penalty feels like an injustice, a failure to adequately punish the perpetrator for the heinous crime committed, a betrayal of their loss. The emotional reactions are intense and the sense of betrayal runs deep. They feel that their loved one's life has not been valued, that the punishment does not fit the crime. On the other side of the divide, families of death row inmates grapple with the agonizing prospect of losing a loved one to state-sanctioned execution. They visit their loved ones in prison, share emotional moments, and try to make the most of the time they have left. They cling to hope, fighting for clemency and maintaining their loved one's innocence even in the face of overwhelming odds. They gather signatures, hold rallies, and do everything in their power to save their loved one from execution. For them, the death penalty is not a deterrent, but a cruel and inhumane punishment that perpetuates a cycle of violence and pain. They believe that taking another life does not bring back their loved one and only adds to the suffering, but a cruel and inhumane punishment that perpetuates a cycle of violence and pain. They march in protests, hold signs, and speak out against what they see as an unjust system. The debate over the death penalty is often framed in stark black and white terms, but the reality is far more nuanced and emotionally charged. It is a debate that involves deeply held beliefs, personal experiences, and moral convictions, but the reality is far more nuanced and emotionally charged. Families on both sides of the issue have valid points and deeply felt emotions. The discussions are intense and the reactions are often visceral. It's a debate that tears at the very fabric of society, exposing raw wounds and deep-seated divisions. Communities come together to support each other, but also find themselves divided by their differing views on the death penalty, exposing raw wounds and deep-seated divisions. The arguments are heated, the faces are distressed, and the wounds are deep. It is a debate that shows no signs of resolution, leaving families and communities to navigate the complex and painful landscape of the death penalty. The contrasting approaches of Presidents Biden and Trump to the death penalty lay bare a fundamental divide in American society. On one hand, there's the law and order approach championed by Trump, which emphasizes punishment and retribution. This view sees the death penalty as a necessary tool for maintaining societal order and deterring future crime. On the other hand, there's the more nuanced approach embraced by Biden, which prioritizes rehabilitation, mercy, and the possibility of redemption. This view questions the effectiveness of the death penalty as a deterrent, highlighting the risk of wrongful convictions and the inherent cruelty of state-sanctioned killing. These two contrasting views reflect a broader debate about the role of government in society. Is the government's primary responsibility to protect its citizens, even if it means resorting to the ultimate punishment? Or should the government strive for a more just and equitable society, even if it means showing mercy to those who have committed terrible crimes? The answer, it seems, depends on who you ask and their personal experiences. The death penalty debate is not just about legal arguments and philosophical principles. It's about deeply held beliefs, values, and personal experiences. It's a debate that cuts to the core of what it means to be American.